Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here for this winter storm discussion that's coming up here in just a few short minutes. We're going to be talking about the various aspects of this system, what the timing looks like, as well as what the snowfall totals look like in our area. First things first, let's talk about the winter storm watch that has been issued. I'm going to punch this up over here, and then I'm going to do something that's a little bit different with you all today. I'm going to show you some off-camera stuff that we actually look at frequently and kind of illustrate the reasons why we're doing what we're doing with this particular system. So here's the winter storm watch. This was expanded south towards the Iowa City area during the overnight hours here this morning. So this goes into effect tomorrow afternoon, stays in effect through tomorrow night, and goes into early on Friday morning. A watch simply means that winter weather is likely in this area during that time period. We could still see it expanded farther down to the south right now. So number one question is usually timing. Number two question is usually on the amounts. So let's start in on the timing aspect of things. So early on tomorrow morning, this is 7 o'clock in the morning. Don't be surprised when you wake up in the morning and literally nothing's happening, because we don't expect anything to happen at all tonight or even into the early morning of tomorrow. By the time we get to about mid to late morning, we'll start to see this snow begin to work into the area, and then probably after about 10 or 11, it begins to work here into eastern Iowa. Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, south through Washington and Mount Pleasant. That's where we're seeing some of that snow at that point. Dubuque, you still haven't seen anything quite yet. You probably won't till after lunchtime, but this will continue to overspread eastern Iowa. All the while, those east winds will be blowing it around a little bit. Then we start getting into the evening hours as well, and you'll notice a wide variety of things going on here, because in some areas, pinpoint futurecast, granted this may not be an exact positioning of this stuff, but you'll notice there are these pockets of nothing going on here. There's also some pockets of really heavy snow that's going on. This is really traditional of what we see pretty much during the month of March. You're going to see some pockets of intense snow. You're going to see some pockets of lighter snow. Either way you look at it, you'll have some snow going on tomorrow evening and right into the overnight hours. By the time we get to early Friday morning, a lot of that activity is gone and off towards the east at that point. So here's our snowfall forecast going forward. For the most part, in the winter storm watch area, anywhere from 3 to 7 inches of snow is what we expect to happen. It's a bit of a wider range than we typically would go with in a situation like this, and I'll justify that here. The temperatures are near freezing throughout this event, so inherently this will be a wetter consistency of snow, meaning it does compact quite a bit as well. Kind of slushy consistency too. Varying totals are going to be likely, and it could come right down to the fact of where you measure the snowfall as to what you get. So I want to illustrate that here real quick. Snow and ice accumulation on grass versus pavement versus elevated surfaces. On the grass, you're more exposed to the colder air. You're kind of off the direct surface there. So vegetation provides some shade, limits the wind, can also absorb a little bit of the excess water and just leave the snow where it's at. Whereas the pavement not only is insulated by the earth, but it also absorbs warmth really well, something we've had a lot of over the past 5 to 7 days. It also cools slowly. Residual salt can still be on there, though we've had plenty of rain that probably washed most of that off. But either way you look at it, even when we've got clouds around and no sunshine, those roadway surfaces are still going to be absorbing at least some of radiation. So as a result, it's probably going to be a little more compacted there on those surfaces versus what we see in the grass. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to show you something that's kind of unique and interesting. I'll punch up a totally different source and kind of show you a little bit under the hood as to what's going on with why we come up with what we come up with in terms of our snowfall amounts. So let me punch this source here, and this is what we're going to see. You're going to see this ugly looking screen right here, which is why we don't show this on TV much, but I'll show it to you now because we have a chance to actually explain what's going on here. So this is our accumulated snowfall with all the different modeling that we use. Let me use my mouse. Everybody can see the mouse. So you'll notice that it's kind of clustered here, generally in this, say, 4 to 6 inch range. Might be a few spots above, might be a few spots below. When we do this, however, this snowfall ratio is using 11 to 1. Typically in March, it's a little bit lower, kind of closer to 9 to 1. So we regenerate the plot of all the different modeling that happens, and you'll notice that it all kind of comes down a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. You can kind of see, though, where things are really clustering at 4 or 5 inches or so right in there. Still could be a few isolated higher ones, still could be a few isolated lower ones, but this is kind of where the blended average is situated, which is where we kind of get these. But this time of year, we like to add kind of an inch on the bottom and an inch on the top to allow for such variance to happen. Now, this is when it's compacted. We can see it right there. Look what happens if I scroll down here and I'm going to run it again, except I'm going to take the compaction off. So a lot of those plots you see that cycle around the internet don't compact. And look what happens to our snowfall amount if we don't compact anything. It's more like 8 to 10. And so we have to take compaction into account, especially in March when it's usually very wet snow. So there could be some spots that are still isolated higher, than 3 to 7, but I want to at least show you under the hood there as to why we do what we do when it comes down to some of these snowfall amounts, because it is very difficult to tell how much will compact and exactly how much of a snow band will come over your individual area with those kind of snowfall rates as well. So that's kind of the reasoning behind the 3 to 7 inch band that we've got out there. Temperatures near freezing throughout, varying totals are likely. Again, a really big thing about this will be the fact that it's wet and slushy consistency. Do you want to go through the timing once again as well? So with the timing, don't be surprised when you get up tomorrow morning and you wind up being in a situation where you're just not seeing a whole lot happening. We'll probably wind up being into a spot where we just pretty much sit there and wonder where the storm is. Believe me, I've seen those emails. I have heard those voice messages. Tomorrow morning, just realize there's nothing going on, and it's expected that there's going to be nothing going on. And I can even go in slower motion here that even from 7 to 9 a.m., there's still not much happening. It's not till after about 10 or 11 where we start to get the first snowflakes of the day to get into Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. And then by the time we get to the early to mid-afternoon, Dubuque, you may not see much till 1 o'clock. You might be totally dry all morning long in Dubuque and not see much till 1, maybe 2 p.m. there towards far northeast sections of the state. So this then overspreads the area throughout the afternoon, right into the early evening hours. Various bouts of intense snowfall possible. It may snow intensely for a time, then it might back off for a time, and then come back again. But the bottom line is it is out there, and it's going to affect a lot of our area. The snowfall totals are generally on the order of about 3 to 7 inches. For those that are just joining us here this morning, this is a quick weather briefing as to what's going to be happening. We're still 24 hours away from the first snowflakes of this system, so we're keeping this very general right now, but it just kind of gives you an idea of why we're doing what we're doing when it comes down to the snowfall forecast as well as the timing. Temperatures near freezing throughout with those varying totals that are going to be fairly likely. That 1 to 3 south towards Oskaloosa and Washington has the potential to come up a little bit if the south trend on the data continues, because it is showing at least a sign that we could get a bit more of a south trend going, but we'll just have to wait and see on it because, again, with temperatures near or slightly above freezing, you get a lot of melt on contact when that happens. So that's why we're being a little more conservative on this particular forecast versus anything else. Snowfall consistency is usually a top question that we also get. There really aren't any powdery and light snow events in March. They can happen, but they're very rare because our temperatures tend to be warmer. This is going to be snowman snow. This is going to be heavyweight, slushy stuff. So if nothing else, if you're looking forward to building a snowman to kick off spring break for your district, might as well. And if you miss your opportunity tomorrow, we got more snow coming Saturday night into Sunday. That'll be a whole different thing that we've got to deal with. But we're going to be dealing with compacted, slushy snowman snow going into tomorrow. One more time for those that are just joining us, and then we'll back out of the way here for today. There'll be more YouTube Lives, as we call them, coming up a little bit later on today, and then going into tomorrow morning, especially right before this event begins. But this is the Winter Storm Watch that has been issued Thursday afternoon through Friday morning. All the shaded counties from Iowa City on up towards the north. We know there's a wide variety of snowfall totals being put out there, but anywhere from 3 to 7 appears pretty reasonable at this time for an expectation, and that's what we're going to go with right now in terms of our snowfall forecast. Lesser amounts farther south, higher amounts central and northern areas. Temperatures are near freezing throughout, and it looks like all snow. It does not look like we're going to see a situation here with any sort of freezing rain of any kind. Again, the way the snowfall accumulates different between the grassy surfaces and the paved surfaces as well. We see usually a little less on pavement and we see a little bit more on grass, and so when you go to measure this stuff, don't be surprised if your driveway is different from your backyard, which might be different from your patio table. So either way we look at it, we're all going to get some snow. Here's one final look at the timing before we get out of your way here on this Wednesday morning. We'll pull this forward through about lunchtime on Thursday. Again, tomorrow morning we don't expect really much of anything in the early morning, so heading to school and work tomorrow morning should not be a problem. By the time we get to the midday hours, we're starting to see the first snowfall snowflakes of the day come through, and yes, it's probably going to be coming down pretty good. Now, the first hour or two, you might see most of the accumulation on grassy surfaces before it finally overwhelms some of those warmer road temperatures and begins to accumulate on the road. That's why I think tomorrow evening could be very interesting in regards to that commute. So watch that commute for tomorrow evening, because the entire TV9 viewing area is involved in some snowfall at that point. During the rest of the overnight hours, watch those snow bands kind of pivot around themselves. It'll snow itself out as we work our way into early on tomorrow morning, and that's when, or early on Friday morning, and that's when things will start to wind down from that perspective. So that's the very latest from us here at KCRG TV9. We're coming up after about 10 minutes here of a weather briefing for you. We've gone through it a number of different times. You'll be able to watch this again as well. The general thinking is about a 3 to 7 inch snowfall for many locations along and north of Interstate 80. Some spots might be a little less, other spots might be a little bit more, but the vast majority of it should probably fall within that range. The reason being, it's a very slushy and wet consistency of snow, and we do expect that, unlike those powdery January events, these March events tend to really compact on themselves because they're heavyweight and full of water. So just want you to be mindful of that as we move our way forward. I'll leave you here. Let's see. I'll leave you here with the snowfall forecast one last time, and then otherwise our TV9 News at midday starts at 11 o'clock. Meteorologist Hannah Messier will be on midday for you today, and then meteorologist Joe Winters will be on tonight at 4, 5, 6, and 10. We'll provide updates throughout the region, and then of course early on tomorrow morning, any final adjustments, we'll be sure and pass those along. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a terrific day, and overall the weather looks good today. It's just tomorrow they'll have to watch for that snow to move through.